Hey you guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my current thoughts on... Can't really say current because I technically finished the book today, but when I wrote the notes for this video, they were my current thoughts. So, very on brand for these videos, but my current thoughts on Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman, and I have a couple things to talk about. It's not super, it's not a lot, but it's not a little bit, so let's just kind of get into it. But if you guys don't know, Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman is about these two girls, Jillian and Sally Owens, who have been kind of dubbed as witches in their small town in Massachusetts, which has led them to be ostracized and have started to pull away from each other because they're really kind of the only friends they have, and that tends to lead to problems. So it ends up they run away. One runs away by literally running away, the other one runs away by getting married, and then eventually running away. But as if by magic, they're pulled back together in their lives to kind of repair their rather shattered relationship and figure out a problem that kind of is their fault, but not really. It's a bit of a mess, essentially. But if you've seen the movie, which this book is what the movie is based off of, you kind of understand where the plot is going, so I really don't have to keep it non-spoilery. But in case you're a weirdo who hasn't seen Practical Magic, I kind of have to. But you should watch Practical Magic after you've read the book because they're both masterpieces, but I digress. Now on to my current thoughts is that right now I'm really digging the omniscient POV. Typically when I read omniscient point of views, I struggle a little bit because the narrator tends to jump from head to head so quickly that it's really hard to see the flow of everything and see how everything is kind of progressing because they know everything. So it'll jump from present time to past to present to somewhere in the future to past to present, and it's just kind of some weird jumbling, but this one is really smooth and flows really well, and I didn't have a problem with it in the slightest. So it was really nice to have that change and for me to be able to enjoy this book. I'm also really digging the complexity of the relationships, primarily because what this book is about is that it explores the complexity of sisterhood and kind of what it means to be sisters and to be blood bound to each other in the most purest and simplest of ways, and to really have each other's back, as well as kind of the complexity of intergenerational sin, as they're kind of suffering from the after effects of what something their ancestor had done and is kind of being forced to go back into being ostracized by their community and not really having a lot of friends because they are bullied for being witches, and it's not something that they can control or have much of a history on, or it's not really their fault either. Weird things tend to happen around them. That's just how life is, apparently. I'm really digging the magical realism aspect of it. I was expecting a lot more, primarily because, one, I've watched the movie my entire life, so some of that tends to stick to me when I read the books that happened before it. But on top of that, the synopsis sounded like the girls were deep into magic and had a lot of knowledge of it, and that the magical realism aspect would be somewhere in those regards, kind of like Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore, where everyone kind of knows these girls for these certain things, but at the same time they are they're accepted and the girls accept them and they're very knowledgeable of this. Here the girls did not know, and it was kind of confusing because they wanted an explanation for everything that was happening in terms of the magic around them, but my knowledge of most magical realism books is that there isn't an explanation for magic that happens around them. So it was really hard to see that and not for them to get an explanation throughout the books, or for the reader to even get an explanation if the characters were to remain unaware. I'm also really excited to see where Jimmy goes in this book, primarily because, like I said, he was a big prevalent part in the movie. He had a really big role, and right now most of his characterization, we didn't meet him until he was, spoiler alert for those who haven't read the book or seen the movie, he was dead. And right now it's just a lot of what we're learning about him is from reports from Jillian's perspective, but we never got to meet the character, so I don't really know how big his presence will be in terms of him kind of being a ghost is the best way I can think about it, or what that necessarily means for the sisters, since they are kind of digging him up from the grave, so to speak, with what is going on. This book is really character driven, and while I don't mind character driven books, sometimes they are a bit slow and it's really difficult for me to figure out where the plot is going, because typically the plot is not even second seat. It is in the backs, in this third row of the car, sleeping. While I am enjoying the plot so far, the character-driven aspect is something that I wasn't necessarily expecting and I couldn't prepare myself for. So sometimes I'm kind of like reading their heads for like 50 pages and wondering exactly the point of this, because I'm not seeing this dramatic change that was spurred on by an action that happened in the plot, but rather their own kind of internal monologues pushing them through it, which is a nice thing to see, but at the same time, it's also still very difficult. I'm also really hesitant to see where this book ends. When I wrote these notes, I was about 60 pages in, and by this time, not a lot had happened. There was a lot of like tension between the sisters. We got to see Sally's kids, Antonia and Kylie, start to become closer friends and grow into themselves more. But in terms of Sally and Jillian's relationship, I hadn't seen something grow, and I didn't see much of it grow in the beginning aspects of the book. So I'm just really concerned about where their friendship is gonna go by the end of this book, if it'll even survive, really, because like what Jillian did was it was a lot for Sally, and I don't blame Sally, but I also don't blame Jillian, so we'll have to see in my review what happens. But that is my thoughts currently for Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman. If you guys had these similar thoughts, please let me know in the comments below. I will have my full-length review up on Goodreads in the next couple weeks, but if you don't follow me on Goodreads, I will also be posting it in a wrap-up in the next couple weeks as well, so keep an eye out for that. But until next time, which should be a fun video because your girl finally read 50 Shades of Grey. Didn't love it, but I read it. Will be up in this next video, so keep an eye out for that if you want to see me scream about a book. But until then, social media links down below like I said, and I will talk to you guys everywhere else. Bye!